Hi everyone. I just want to welcome you to my studio today. I am so excited to just walk you through a little tutorial. I will be sharing with all of you how to use my latest stencil collection called Build Your Own Bouquet. This is one of the pieces that I have created with my Build Your Own Bouquet stencils. In fact, I actually used every single stencil in this piece, even though some of them are sort of more like minor parts to this stencil. I did use every single one. So when I sat down to design these stencils, what I had in mind was I really wanted something that people could sort of make their own, right? I wanted to offer a set of stencils where you can kind of mix and match and create your own still life painting just like this one, right? And so that's what I set out to do in this collection. I am a still life artist, and so I love using stencils in this way. I often, even if I am creating a still life piece that I have painted mostly out of my mind and my brain, or even if I'm taking a still life photo as my inspiration, sometimes I will just use one or two stencils to sort of finish off a piece, right? And so I really love using stencils in this way. And honestly, I was almost just a little bit selfish in why I designed these. I really wanted to make some stencils that I could see myself using in a lot of my paintings. And so that's really what this collection is all about for me. And what's really exciting is that you can mix and match with whatever floral stencils you have in your stash. So you don't have to necessarily stop at just the stencils in this collection. You can use what you already have and include that in some of your mixed media paintings. So this is probably a more detailed type of piece that I created with my stencils. But here is what the stencil actually looks like. So this is, well, what one of the stencils actually looks like, right? And so this is what my floral vase stencil looks like without any embellishments. And what I really wanted to accomplish with this stencil is I really wanted to take the shapes that I am constantly using and reusing for a lot of my paintings. I wanted to break down a still life vase into the shapes that I use in my still life paintings. And so that's really all I've done is I have taken my vase, water vase, and I have created the stencil or the base to create a vase, right? And then I just added some greenery because I thought, if you want, that can sort of be the very background layer, right? And so all of these areas up and through here are going to kind of serve as the first layer, right? And And then you can continue to build on top of that by adding whatever flowers you want to add in, right? And so you can use my hyacinth stencil and add a hyacinth, or you can use my daisy stencils, or really any stencil, any floral stencil that you have sitting around. So I wanted to show you, this is another piece that I've done, and this one is just much more simple, right? This just is sort of scaled back compared to this piece, right? This is way more detailed, and it's almost like I used the stencil as the foundation for my vase. But this one is, I really just like the simplicity of it, right? And so it really just all depends on whatever style you're going for. But I really just want to go ahead and share with you some different strategies of how to use this stencil here. So first off, I just have a piece of Strathmore mixed media paper here, okay? You can do this lesson on an artboard, you can do it on a canvas, which is what I just showed with all of you, or you can do it on a piece of paper. So what I really want to emphasize as I share this with all of you is really sort of breaking this stencil down into different portions, right? Because in order for it to work, we want to create some kind of dimension in our vase. Now, dimension is created by layers, but it's also created by the light and the dark, okay? And so we are going to choose what colors we use very carefully as we fill in this stencil. So I just want to point out there are a few different colors that I'm wanting to use in this piece. There are areas where you can see all the greenery that is coming down into my water vase, right? And so those we're going to want to keep fairly green, right? And likewise, all this stuff up here, probably keep it fairly green. Although there are some areas where I might, if I wanted to, you know, emphasize different flowers, I could pull in some pinks or color or, you know, whatever you want. So one section is going to definitely be green, right? And then the actual water vase, I actually recommend using like a lighter color around the edges. So some of these lines around here these are all going to be lighter. Also right here. So this is not green. It's going to be like a light gray, or even a white would work really well as also. And then the third color that you're going to want is you're going to want some like deeper tones, like darker color. And so, you know, not necessarily a black, but a darker gray, an indigo, a navy, something that is just a darker color. Like you could even use, like, this is a sepia here. It's almost like a brown color. So where you're gonna want that is on the bottom here, because what I did with these two marks is I am showing you where to put the shadow underneath the vase. So in this one, I have gone ahead and I have really done a lot more embellishing. So I actually painted the whole part dark, right? And then I have the reflection of the light coming through the glass, and that's that lighter, like minty color, right? And so, yeah, like I think that what you can do is you can take it a step farther. You can add even more dimension by expanding upon it. So you can color this whole area in darker, and that is going to create dimension, because when it's up against this lighter, like white color right here, it's going to look like this is the shadow from the vase. Does that make sense? So really choosing your colors wisely is probably the most important thing for using this particular stencil. So again, remember we are working on a piece of mixed media paper. And this is the Strathmore brand. Oh, and I did forget to mention that this line back in through here, this is the other line in the water. Does that make sense? And so, and this one right here is also, it's like the bottom of the vase going sort of around. And so those two areas, I would say maybe a darker or a mid-tone for those, right? And so I think that works really well. So just a few little tips here. Like one thing that you could absolutely do is you could just take, so you could actually just take a pen, and why are none of my pens working? This is really bizarre. This is just a gel pen. These are just gel pens, and apparently I don't have a single one that's working at the moment. Okay, so you could absolutely just take a pen and go around your shapes in your stencil, and that would actually just give you the lines that you want to use to create your vase, and then you can come back and embellish with paint. That's one idea, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get right into painting. Whenever I am painting a still life, I always try to start at the top and work my way down. Does that make sense? So I think I'm going to go ahead and start with this green gold that I have. Now, you can use any kind of acrylic paint for this type of a piece, right? I just am in love with Charvin's heavy body. Well, I'm calling it heavy body, but this is just an acrylic paint made by Charvin. It's the only one they make, but what I love about it is you sort of get the feel of an oil. They are a lot more creamy and luscious than most acrylic paints, and because I'm really an oil painter at heart, I'm always looking for mediums that kind of mimic what an oil paint does, right? And so that's why I chose this, and in all reality, it works really great for stencils. So you don't necessarily have to have the Charvin brand paint. This is just what I prefer to use. Any kind of acrylic paint, although I would steer maybe away from more fluid, high flow type of paints, just because I always tend to make a mess of them when using them with stencils. And I don't really know why. I think it's just that because it's looser, it goes underneath the stencil, and yeah. Then my stencils end up not being super crisp and lovely. So I can actually use a paintbrush, but I have found that really one of the best ways to build these pieces is to use this heavy acrylic paint with a palette knife. Do you have to use a palette knife? No, I mean, it just has to do with what you're really comfortable with, right? And I love using a palette knife. I end up making a lot of very textural work, and so for me, oftentimes I feel more at home using a palette knife versus using a paintbrush for whatever reason. But I think that especially with this paint, we are going to get really super crisp lines by using a palette knife for this. So all I'm doing is I am taking some of this greenery here, and I'm just using my palette knife to fill in the holes in my stencil. The only thing about doing it this way is that it wastes so much paint, and sometimes that makes me crazy. Well, I should choose my words a little bit more carefully. It doesn't waste paint, it uses paint. So, yeah. So actually, I'm kind of wondering though, if I use this color, is it gonna stand out enough? And I don't know, I think maybe we need to take it a step darker. Because what happens on these toned papers is that sometimes the color doesn't show up as vibrant depending on what the hue is for this kind of a piece. So I just grabbed some sap green as well, and I'm going to kind of mix that in just to get a little bit of a darker color. But you could actually go lighter, but yeah. And you can actually do a little bit of both. In fact, I really love it when I kind of go back and forth between two different shades of color in a piece like this. So this is, some of this greenery might end up getting covered up with some different floral elements, and that is perfectly okay. I just like to mention that early on. So really what I'm doing is, this is the very first layer of my bouquet for my still life here. So we have that happening, and then also I want to make sure I get these stems that are in the water vase here as well. Remember, these groups of shapes that are sort of in the center, those are all the stems of the flowers that are coming down into the water vase. So the nice thing about using a much thicker paint is that I don't have to worry so much about the paint kind of leaking underneath my stencil. And I think that's important because when you leave the stencil on for a longer period of time, like I'm doing, you want to make sure that it doesn't, end up making a mess all over your paper or your canvas here. And I think because we are using more than one color, it wouldn't be a big deal if I was just gonna do the whole thing one color, like, green or white or whatever. But because I'm switching colors, it can be a little bit problematic because I am quite possibly keeping the stencil down for a longer period of time, right? And I just want to mention really fast as well that sometimes what happens is you kind of get a little bit of mixing. So remember I said that this line across, I want that to be like a lighter color because it's actually the water that is in the vase right there. So, if some of the green gets into the blue, it's not like the end of the world, right? Okay, so as we continue to move on, I think I'm gonna use, this is a sky gray, and this is perfect for the outside of my vessel here. So I'm just gonna take that and I'm gonna go around. And I think I'm also gonna use this color for the water line as well. So water line and the edge of my vase. That's what we're gonna do this color. And then we're going to focus on the back water line and then the bottom of the vase, as well as, look at that, I'm spilling paint off of my palette knife. It's kind of funny. Then I'm gonna do the darker color underneath the vase to do the shadow of the vase. So here we go, I'm going down, and I also just want to get a good amount of paint because I don't want to run out kind of mid work. And there's another, you could also actually just let the greenery sort of dry, and then you could come back with some of these other colors. That's also another strategy. It's going to give you less sort of like bleeding between the colors, especially in the water vase, especially between the greenery and the water line, right? And so that is also another option for this part, or another option for the process, I should say, of creating our water vase. So here we go. And then just doing these other lines over here. And I need a little bit more paint. Okay, so that is that lighter color. That's really all I need of that color. And now I'm gonna pull like a mid-tone of a blue. So I have, this is like a cobalt. It feels a little bit more of almost like a royal blue, but that's okay. And then this is called Alexander's blue. So I think those two colors together would be really nice for a part or a portion of the vase and the water here. So let's see, I just want to get this part right here, and then we're going back through here. And I feel like this is taking way longer than I normally would take just because I'm talking to you guys. So hopefully I don't like mess it up too bad, right? Because I feel like I'm getting a whole bunch of colors like mixed into each other. So hopefully it'll be a good result in the end. But even still, I will at least have the lines that I need for building my painting. And now I think I'm just gonna take some indigo, and that's what I'm gonna use for the shadow here. And I might even actually take some of this blue and put it also in the bottom of my vase here, because I think that that color also looks really nice on the bottom. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and finish that. And now we're going to pull our stencil up, and hopefully I didn't make too much of a mess for you guys. I feel like it's a reveal or something. Kind of was stuck on there just a touch because of how long it was sitting there, but look at how stinking cool that turned out. So even in some of the areas where the blue got in the green and the green got in the blue, I think it just adds to the character of it. And now I have a really simple water vase with some greenery in it. And we're going to continue to build this piece. And I really am excited because we can now focus on adding in some of our floral elements and our flowers, and we're going to build our still life painting. But I just want to mention that the simplicity of this is just awesome. And I like it just as is, but you can continue to kind of embellish and blend colors. You can add some more like green stems coming down into your vase, which is actually kind of what I did with the first piece that I showed all of you. I really added a lot more elements into it. And so I added quite a bit more green stems, and I just continued to sort of paint in some of the shapes, including the shadow underneath. So I just wanted to make that point that, you know, you can keep it as simple as you want, but then you can embellish as much as you want, right? So before we continue to add any flowers in, which is going to be so much fun, right? I actually have to wait for this first layer of paint to dry. And what I really love about using this super heavy body acrylic paint is that it becomes almost, it's very textural, but it's almost becomes like a sculpture, right? So I wanted to show you one of the other pieces that I have been working on, and that is something like this, right? And it's so cool, like, because the paint is so thick, it feels very textural. So this is also another piece that I am creating with one of my stencils is kind of the background, and then I'm just building almost like an abstract floral on top of it. But this was created all with stencils from this collection. So just to show you another idea, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna let this first layer dry, and then I'm gonna be back in just a bit to continue to build this still life painting with my Build Your Own Bouquet stencil collection.